We're just a matter of days away from the 2020 US presidential election, and it may be too late to secure physical voting infrastructure. But that doesn't mean that election officials and cybersecurity experts alike are not concerned about security threats around the election. Let's dive into those and more. Stick around. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Today in Tech. I'm Juliette Beauchamp, and I'm so excited to be here today with the former Deputy CIO of Johnson County, Kansas, Brian Thomas. Brian, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Juliette. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
So I think at first glance, when the everyday voter hears election security, I think it can be common to think, security of the physical voting machines. That's perhaps that's your entry point to election infrastructure, right? But is there really a concern around the security of these physical voting machines?
That's a great question, and I think what I'd like to add or provide to this audience, your audience today, Juliette, is that's always a concern, of course. But since the 2016 general election, there's been a lot of concern about hacking from an outside country or influencer like Russia. So security teams have gone through a stringent process to obviously harden their network. But let me take it a step further. These voting machines, these electronic voting machines, actually there are several vendors in the United States. Every state and county uses a different vendor typically. But at the end of the day, these systems are proprietary hardware and software. The data that's on each individual machine is encrypted. They actually use a flash drive that is proprietary and will not work in any other computer and vice versa. And also this data is tabulated at the end of the night of an election at the main election facility. Again, this is all on a closed network. There are no external access to the internet, to any other network in the voting system at the county. And again, every state and county is different, but where I worked and where I had experience was the county runs the elections in the state of Kansas. So essentially with a hard and closed network, it makes it hard for people to actually hack the system. Obviously at the end of the night when it's tallied, it does have to be transported securely through a connection to the state of Kansas. And again, that data is encrypted. Nobody has access to that physically. So it'd be very hard to obviously hack or get into that system. Not to say it could never happen, but I would say the measures around these systems now are very strict. In fact, like I said, they have to go through the EAC, which is the Federal Election Assistance Commission that certifies these machines. So it makes it very hard. So I want to put people at ease. Obviously, there's always that risk, but we put a lot of effort into securing these machines to put voting where it needs to be at the top of basically at the priority list when it comes to voting.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious to hear, too, in your experience, you have experience working with your local election officials in the midterm elections in 2018. And I'm curious about what some of the cybersecurity threats were then and what steps, if any, election officials or even more broadly, internet companies, social media companies have taken to minimize those threats and risks.
Sure. So from a county election system, in fact, because of the disinformation that was coming out and obviously a lot of partisanship that was going on during the midterms, in fact, people were very vocal even in our county about, hey, how do we know this is a valid election? Who's checking? Who's watching the watcher? Of course, there's a whole process around this. We talked about the machines themselves and how they're hardened and secured and encrypted. But what's the process? Well, of course, we have a lot of volunteers, but we do have employees that work at the county that are there to ensure that the election goes smoothly and that there is no disruption to that process. We require an ID, obviously, to validate that the person is who they say they are. As far as other types of influence, like again, cybersecurity is always a risk, and we take that very seriously. But there's also other external influencers, for example, social media. Regardless, there is a lot of mis or disinformation out there on social networks, whether it's coming outside the United States or within the United States. It's there, and people need to be aware that they need to work with their local officials and maybe their parties to understand exactly what the threats are as far as that is, because there is just a lot of, I guess, as some people would say, there's a lot of fake news out there, and you just got to be careful of what you're doing. But I want to put people at ease that the election voting systems, in my experience, have been very well ran. There's a very disciplined and structured process around it, and that equipment is federally certified, and it's all encrypted.
When it comes to the issue of foreign interference, too, I think a lot of people, what obviously comes to mind when people think of foreign interference in elections, I think a lot of the time they think of Russia's successful, at times, attempt to influence the 2016 presidential election. And I'm curious what advice you would offer to just the general public when it comes to combating disinformation and misinformation online. I think in some ways the onus is being put on social media companies to flag incorrect content or take it down, but I think there is still a responsibility for the public to look at things with a healthy dose of skepticism, which can sometimes be really difficult. So I'm wondering what you would advise the public to be aware of in these just few days leading up to Election Day.
Absolutely. I think in this political environment we live in this frenzy, everybody's excited about one candidate or another, is go out and do your own homework, research. You can't just pick one source of information, and some people literally take their Twitter feed as source of information. And I found that Twitter, and I'm a very active user on Twitter, I find that a lot of things on Twitter on both sides of the aisle are completely false. I fact checked myself going out to various different websites, news sources, etc. There's always going to be that type of influence. And what I would suggest to the average American citizen is to go out and do their own research and not just believe everything that their neighbor or their colleague says, and really do your homework, research it. There are a lot of organizations, big companies that have influence in these elections, and people need to do their homework. And I would leave it at that. It's pretty straightforward. If everybody gets involved in their elections, we will have fair and legitimate elections.
Great. So before I let you go, we've already touched upon the fact that, physical voting machine infrastructure is, in your experience, quite secure. I think before I let you go, I'd like to know maybe just the top, 2 or 3 cybersecurity concerns that really are front of mind, or cybersecurity threats that are front of mind right now as it pertains to election security.
Sure. Again, with the advent of the new tools that are out there, it's costing companies more to protect their data. And that goes for election systems. That data, even though it's on a closed network, proprietary, encrypted, we always have to be working hard to secure all perimeters, including physical access. Physical access is a big part of this, and physical security will always be part of the elections. A chain of custody, signatures, lockers, safes, the whole 9 yards are covered from an election standpoint. But the top cybersecurity threats, again, is just a matter of what I would say could be a cause at some point is malware has become very prevalent. And somehow if a piece of malware gets somewhere on some device that brings down an election system during, let's say, election night, would be pretty devastating. Obviously, people would want to understand is that once you come out of the mess and fix it, is that data still good? Do we need to revote? That sort of thing. So I would suggest that, just like anything else, be careful what you open in your emails, clicking on links, that sort of thing is probably top of mind. But security professionals are always on the alert, looking at some of the latest threats out there. And sometimes they come from foreign governments. A lot of times.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Brian. I think this is really insightful and can both make sure that, our everyday voters, American voters who may be watching, can have faith in the elections because, there is no democracy, of course, with fair and elections that have integrity. So I think that this has been really insightful, and I hope that, everyone's fears are eased and they just feel more knowledgeable about what types of threats are out there. So thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Juliet. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you. And thank you all so much for watching this episode of Today in Tech. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon in the corner so you're notified every single time we post a new video. If you have any specific questions about election security threats, or if you have sort of seen or even been the target of any sort of misinformation campaign online ahead of the U.S. presidential election, I'm really curious to hear your experience, so let me know in the comments below. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.